So seeing as it is 5:30, we will call the Historic Landmark Commission meeting to order. I see we have a full audience tonight. For the sake of procedure, I will remind everyone that if you want to make a public comment, you can deposit a comment card with a member of the staff or the commission, and we will recognize that. Approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Due to procedural error, we didn't get those posted in time, so we will dispense with that for the moment and do that for the last meeting and the current meeting at our next meeting. Report of the chair and vice chair. There's nothing really to report. Unfortunately, of course, as we all know, John Uganowski has left the commission, unfortunately, and we appreciate his service. Later this evening, we will have elections for chair and vice chair, given his departure. Does the director or designee have any report to provide?
I don't have anything, thank you.
All right. In that case, we will move directly on to general public comments, and we do have one comment card from Cindy Cromer.
Oh, there it is. So my name is still Cindy Cromer, and I'm here to invite you to the 25th anniversary celebration of the acquisition of the Gilgal Garden, which occurred 25 years ago in 2000. I'll start with the beginning, which was when Thomas Child, after World War II, began creating the garden in the center of the block, anchored by Chuck-A-Rama. The garden is directly behind Chuck-A-Rama. And it was also directly behind his home. And he continued working on the garden until his death. I won't talk about that part of the history. 50 years later, the garden belonged to the Fetzer family. And they were looking at redeveloping the property. A group of artists and citizen activists gathered together and raised the money. It was extraordinary. It was a partnership between the Trust for Public Lands, individual donors, the LDS Churches Foundation, and a whopping gift from Salt Lake County. The mayors weren't really speaking to each other civilly at the time, but Salt Lake County gave the majority of the money for the purchase to Salt Lake City. It was truly a miracle. So here we are years later, and the current Friends of the Gilgal Sculpture Garden have put together an event. It goes from 1 to 5. There are 3 and maybe 4 new activities which will, I hope, become part of the legacy of this event. We have John Lambert, who I'm sure you all know, has gone through Child's writings and pulled out the sources for the stones, all the way from northern Utah to Wayne County. So we'll have an activity around that. Grant Fetzer will be there to tell stories about the way it was back then. And we have the very, very talented Lisa Thompson, now working for the Museum of Natural History, who has done a scavenger hunt. So that's on the agenda. I hope those things will become part of the website. You now have an electronic version of the invitation. Please share that with any of your friends who might be likely to show up. The event is Sunday afternoon. That is the time the garden was historically open to the public, 1 to 5. And please come. I'm going to slip away because I heard the presentation for tonight at the Planning Commission. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, we will close public comments. We have no public meeting items on the agenda, so we will proceed directly to the work session for the Avenues Community Plan update.
Well, thank you all for being here for this one briefing item. Riley and I are here to brief the commission on the Avenues Community Plan, which we are in the process of updating. This plan was identified as needing to be updated because it is our oldest community plan, last updated in 1987. There we go. Thank you. Community plans build on city policies and initiatives established in our citywide general plan, which is Plan Salt Lake. This plan is proposed to be updated so it better aligns with Plan Salt Lake as well as other citywide plans such as Housing SLC. Because each neighborhood and community within Salt Lake City is unique, each community will help carry out the vision in its own unique way. The plan will help create a vision for the community for the next 10 years. This slide outlines the general process for plan updates, as you can see where we are in between the analyzed data and draft plan stage. As part of the planning process, we established an existing conditions report. I'm just going to go over a few of the highlights from the existing conditions report. It's available online on the Avenues Plan Update Project website. So this is the plan area. It's approximately 3,000 acres. This is a quick snapshot of the demographics. Things vary widely among census tracts, so we ended up splitting up the information by census tracts for our analysis. The Avenues is home to about 8% of the Salt Lake City population. A high percentage of the population has a college degree, and median income is similar to the median income of Salt Lake City as a whole, with the exception of one census tract, which is the dark blue color there in the upper Avenues. This map reflects the development periods of the Avenues. Nearly half of them were constructed before the year 1920. This is reflective of a historic development pattern that predates our zoning, which wasn't implemented until 1927. This is mostly true for the lower Avenues. The light teal color is what represents that early period of construction prior to 1920, and then those later periods you can see developed north of 9th Avenue in subsequent years.
Do you mind if I interject a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you remind me when the Avenues Historic District was created?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I know it's in our existing conditions report, but I want to say it was the 90s.
Yeah.
We'll double check for you, but it is listed in our existing conditions report.
I don't recall offhand. I was just noticing the drop off between 1970 and 1980 and wondered if that was as a result of that.
I know the local district only goes to 7th Avenue, so yeah. But we'll double check on that and let you know. This is a map of, that was a great lead into my next slide. So this is a map of the historic districts within the Avenues. There are 3 historic districts. The Avenues, which is solely within the Avenues. There's also City Creek Historic District as well as South Temple Historic District. Just the northern portion of the South Temple Historic District is within the Avenues plan boundaries. The hatched area represents the areas that are only in the National District, and then the other areas that are solid filled and hatched are both within the local historic district overlay that you all oversee and implement, as well as we have individually listed landmark sites within the plan area and individually listed National Register properties within the plan area. In terms of land use and zoning, the majority of the land is zoned for residential uses or open space. Open space is largely occupied by the foothills as well as the city cemetery. Mixed use and institutional public lands and commercial lands only make up each about 1% in the community. The majority of the housing types in the avenues are single-family, followed closely by apartments at 39%. Almost all of the apartments are located in the lower avenues. As you can see on the map, the lower avenues is much more mixed in terms of housing types than the rest of the avenues community.
100% of all households in the avenues are within a 15-minute walk of a park trailhead or the city cemetery. Notable parks in this neighborhood include Popperton Park, Memory Grove, and the 11th Avenue Park. Daily traffic volumes are highest along South Temple, 11th, 3rd, and 2nd Avenue, and B, E, I, and Virginia Street. There are existing bus routes throughout the avenues. Routes along 9th Avenue and South Temple are part of a frequent service networks, which means that the bus stops along these roads are served every 15 minutes from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Saturday. The bus routes traveling along 11th Avenue and Virginia Street are served every 60 minutes, and along 3rd Avenue, bus stops are served also every 60 minutes. Public engagement for the project is generally divided into 3 categories: opportunities and issues which took place during spring and summer of this year, big ideas, which we are in the middle of now and will continue through fall of this year, and the final vision category, which will take place over this fall and spring of 2026. During the opportunities and issues stage, the team presented highlights from the existing conditions report to the community to gather feedback that will inform the Avenues Plan update. During this stage, we also held stakeholder interviews, had an online survey and open house, and several in-person outreach events. I'll talk a bit more about the public engagement that has taken place so far later on in our presentation. During the big idea stage, which we are in now, we will brief the Planning Commission, Historic Landmark Commission, and the City Council on the plan update process. We will share the initial engagement results during these briefings and separately with the public at other engagement events to get feedback on the common themes we've identified in our draft initiatives. For our first public engagement opportunity our team is planning to attend the Avenue Street Fair Festival on September 13th. And there will be other opportunities for public input, but those are yet to be determined. And finally, during the final vision stage, we will get feedback on the final draft plan from city commissioners, the city council, city department reviewers, and the public. We will also hold engagement events in the community to provide an opportunity for the public to review the draft plan and provide feedback. And the online open house webpage will be continuously updated throughout the project timeline to provide information to the public on its status and upcoming engagement opportunities. We have held 6 in-person events at various locations throughout the community, including Smith's and Memory Grove. At these events, interactive boards were used to collect public input on various topics, including housing, transportation, parks, and the local economy. We've held 8 stakeholder interviews with various community members, including those from the Greater Avenues Community Council, business owners, and other residents. The project has an online open house webpage to provide information to the public on the status of the plan update and upcoming engagement opportunities. An online survey was created to gather feedback from the Avenues residents, and in total, we have had 265 survey responses. No, it closed on August 1st.
Just the first window of engagement has closed.
The feedback gathered from the initial community engagement will be analyzed on how it aligns with the existing community conditions and relevant citywide policies. And the common themes that are identified will be used to inform the goals and policies that will shape the updated plan. In general, neighborhood residents greatly value the neighborhood's historic character, walkability, and sense of community. 95% of survey respondents rate quality of life in the avenues as good or very good. When asked about the most important issues facing the avenues, participants identified housing costs and availability, transportation safety and access, and the lack of neighborhood serving businesses and amenities. Other areas of concern include redevelopment of the LDS hospital and lack of bike infrastructure. Since the Avenues is an established neighborhood, public outreach related to housing aimed to identify the preferred strategies for increasing housing units while preserving existing homes. Most survey respondents want more housing throughout the neighborhood, but compatibility of new development was greatly emphasized. The most popular strategies for adding housing units include adaptive reuse of existing buildings, new mixed-use development, and infill development by allowing different housing types in certain areas. When asked about the preferred infill development types, duplexes, townhomes, small single-family, and small-scale multifamily containing 4 to 9 units were the preferred types. Community engagement related to transportation issues aim to understand the community's perspective on safety and access in the Avenues neighborhood. Speeding and unsafe intersections are the most frequent safety concerns, and other areas of concern include the lack of bike infrastructure, pedestrian safety, and public transit frequency.
Do you have police reports on how many accidents there are?
We have crash data that we've overlaid onto maps, and then we had participants do a mapping exercise where they identified, locations that they have issues with or have seen issues with. It's not necessarily just crashes. We heard a lot about buses driving, up I Street, and the speed of the buses and the shaking of the buses and things related to that. So it wasn't just crash data.
And do we know, so just on, hopefully this isn't too far off, on Virginia Street, they put in all those speed humps. They just finished that. Are they planning to do that, do you know, on I Street? Because that's a huge issue, I Street.
I'm not sure if they're planning on doing it on I Street. From our understanding, we met with, what is the transportation group that Connect, when we met with Laura Stevens. Yeah, the Livable Streets Project. And they have various locations throughout the city that they've identified in terms of zones, not zones as we typically talk about them with zoning districts, but zones where they've prioritized funding for speed reduction type things like the speed bumps. From our understanding, the Avenues is not at the top of that priority list in terms of needing speed bumps. But the Virginia Street, I think there was an overarching larger transportation project. And so since they were already doing the streets, they implemented those along with that.
Thank you.
So in terms of preservation, you are right, it was the 70s. 1978 is when the local district and the national district was adopted. We heard a lot about public feedback related to preservation. Overwhelmingly mentioned historic architecture as one of the key attributes of the community. In terms of the historic overlay requirements, common responses were that the overlay has helped preserve what many people love about the Avenues, because the buildings do have to go to the commission for demolition oversight, largely was attributed to that. Many also expressed the desire for flexibility when making updates to their homes or repairs. There was also feedback that some are not so familiar with the requirements. They're unsure what they can and can't do. Additionally, we heard comments about new construction review process and resulting projects. It was more specific to one project and not projects in the Avenues that we heard a lot of comments about. It is the townhome project. Well, we heard about that one, but that is not in the historic district.
The one that
It
replaced
replaced
the
an old
service
gas station.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I ask another question? I'm just curious, have you tracked whether there's any difference, whether you're seeing any difference between responses from people within the historic district and those who live in the Avenue outside of the historic district? I'm just wondering if there's, if we're seeing any kind of difference. and how people feel
I would
about
say
things?
it's still pretty mixed. We did track that. One of the questions on the survey was, where in the avenues do you live? I think there was a mix of people, but the majority of the people did live in the upper avenues, but some definitely lived in the historic district and were familiar with the requirements and had used them before. We had some other topics come up that were preservation related, which is just the desire for the city cemetery and its retention and continued success, as well as preservation incorporated into placemaking elements in the avenues. Things that were mentioned were incorporating like historic history onto signs or wayfinding elements that have some historic, attribute to them. And then because 100% of residents live within a 15-minute walk to a park, public engagement largely focused on what improvements could be made to our existing parks to make them more usable, what amenities maybe are lacking in the parks. And we mostly heard about maintenance and upkeep, shade, lighting, play structures, splash pads, gathering areas, restrooms, drinking fountains, and additional space for gathering. Engagement related to commercial uses focused on amenities people would like to see more of or thought were lacking in the communities. These included cafes, butcher and flower shops were mentioned, restaurants, retail, a recreation center, and entertainment. Preferred locations for commercial uses were pretty mixed, with all of these locations having a similar percentage of responses spread out through the avenues, on corner properties, clustered near other development, and then specific streets were also asked about. The main choices that emerged were 3rd Avenue and East Street being the most popular. In terms of next steps, back to our engagement timeline, right now we are through the initial stage of engagement. When you asked about if the survey was closed, we have still had people reaching out to us asking, hey, I didn't get to contribute. And we still are taking public comment, but the survey itself is closed. So people can submit public comment at any point in this process. But the actual survey for that initial opportunities and issues gathering stage has been closed. Again, so right now we're at the big ideas stage. We are drafting policy initiatives to share with the community in the coming months. And our final engagement window, again, we'll be sharing the draft vision for feedback, and then hearings with the commissions, and eventually onto City Council. And that is all we have prepared for you today, but happy to take any additional questions or comments or feedback that you have.
Sure, I'll kick that off. So obviously, LDS Hospital and what's going to happen with that building and the surrounding area is going to be a major question in the avenues. I'm sure it came up quite a bit. I noticed in the update document that we received, there were some references to it, but not a whole lot. And I think there's still some question about what will ultimately happen there. Has there been any discussion or conceptualization on the city side about what zoning would be applicable to that space if the institutional zoning were to go away, if LDS Hospital was no longer there?
Yeah, so that is something that we'll be looking at with this plan update. As part of the plan update, it will include a future land use map, and that land use map essentially, helps guide development over the next 10 years. We don't have that yet. We do plan to have some form of at least some initial concepts ready for the Avenue Street Festival on the 13th. In terms of planning for that site, we haven't planned anything, other than the engagement that we've done and meeting with LDS Hospital, which didn't really give us any additional knowledge that we didn't already not have. But yes, it is a topic that we have heard a lot about. right now, the middle portion is zone urban institutional, so it could have housing, like if they wanted to build housing tomorrow, they could, and the permitted height is 75 feet. I think the building on the site now, just based on rough LiDAR estimates, is approximately 101 feet, and then the surrounding buildings are a little bit lower than that, so more like 40s and 50s.
So if the frequency of plan updates is generally about 10 years, that renewal cycle could potentially fall around the time when a lot of those conversations would be occurring, or maybe a little after even. Given the centrality of that site to the avenues and this area plan, is that something that would be revisited earlier than 10 years? Obviously, it's been quite some time since the plan was revisited here, and quite a bit out of cycle, I guess I would say. So I was curious about what the next steps would be based on, if 6, 7, 8 years pass before there's really a decision about what's going to happen with that site, if that would be something that would be accelerated in order to account for that, given the magnitude.
Yeah, I think we're planning on addressing it in some fashion with this plan update. Certainly, things could change in the next 10 years. One of the things that we are really focusing on with the plans that we are starting to update, we're also in the process of updating the Northwest Community Plan, Rose Park area, Poplar Grove area, and our team is also going to be doing Capitol Hill here in the next few weeks. We'll be publishing that existing conditions report. But one thing with the older plans that we have in place right now, they are very in-depth. And there's a lot of policies in there that are not really related to land use and aren't really feasible for us to implement. Like, we don't have control over them. So one thing that we are really looking at doing is simplifying our plans so that they are easier to implement and can be updated within 10 years instead of taking decades to do so. But we are looking at addressing some aspects of that site, not necessarily planning exactly for it, because we don't know what they're doing, and they've indicated they also don't know what they're doing, so, but planning for it in some fashion.
Okay. I'll defer. Does anyone else have any additional questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious how the plan could potentially impact the work that we do. So, are there changes? Could there be changes in, how in the master plan for the avenues that would impact how we currently deal with the historic district? Is there a possibility that the plan would incorporate the idea of expanding the historic district in the avenues?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, what are the potential sort of issues that may end up coming, touching up against what we do?
Yeah, we don't have the exact policies that we're looking at doing yet because we're still in the early stages, but in terms of impacting what you all do, I don't think there's anything that would necessarily change what you all do in terms of, we're still going to have review for new construction, and we still have certificate of appropriateness requirements for minor alterations. Those types of things. We could potentially look at if there are recommendations in the survey to expand the period of significance, or we could see what period that goes to in the survey, and then look at potentially the structures that may be worthy of that 50-year age eligibility now and how those interact. I don't know if the city would take that on ourselves to survey the neighborhood again. That survey, I think, was last updated in 2013. But yes, those are certainly things that we could look at in terms of what you all do. Another thing that we may look at is just, are there opportunities to streamline some of the historic district processes in a way that maybe additional authority could be delegated to staff on some things, or maybe there's some things that we just don't need a COA for. We already have a list of things that are exempt from obtaining a COA. Maybe it's expanding that. So I think there will be minor little tweaks to what you all do, but I don't think it's going to be changed substantially.
I've had a lot of people ask me, what are the avenues? What is the Avenues Historic District? As you were saying, people don't quite know. I live in Pill Hill, which we consider a historic district for mid-century modern. And the questions I've been getting are twofold, besides where is the historic district lines, are you going to ever put in sight lines for building? So for example, in La Jolla, if you want to build on the hill looking out over the ocean, you cannot block anyone's view. So you have to put up sticks for about 6 months with cords on them to make sure that it's not blocking anything. We don't, to my knowledge, have any of those kind of rules. And as you start going up above, I'd say 6th Avenue, the north side of the streets all have views. So people are wondering, well, with these changes, if you put in a fourplex or you've got a 80-foot this and that, how is that going to affect my view? Because we're all very particular about our views up there. And what's the other one? Oh, shade. So if you do put in a 80-foot building, are you going to totally shade my property next door? And I haven't heard any of that kind of comments other than from my neighbors. So I'm just sharing that. And I can certainly put that into better sentences and send it off to you if you'd like, but I just wanted to mention those things.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of like view corridors, we do have an overlay for the Capitol building. It largely impacts Capitol Hill area, and there is a height overlay, and you can't get additional height if you're in that overlay through any type of review process.
Our multi-million-dollar homes at the top of our multi-million-dollar homes at the top of the avenues, the views are precious. That's one of the reasons they're multi-million-dollar homes, and people are worried about that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had to say. Is that it?
Anyone else? I guess I'm interested in this beautification and placemaking aspect of the, I don't know, the suggestions. Were there particular places that folks had in mind, or are there particular places that you might have in mind for beautification or placemaking?
No, I think that's something that we would look at in terms of where would be an appropriate place for that. We've talked about better utilizing public right-of-way. We've also talked about the avenues. There are parks within the avenues that are heavily visited by just residents of the avenues, but then there's also a draw from other communities to several areas within the avenues for trails and that type of use, and its proximity to the University of Utah. So I think there is, we received comments related to how we could better help people navigate around to those types of elements within the community, as well as just like a sense of place, like placemaking. I don't know if there's anything else that I missed.
Oh, one thing that comes to mind for me is the commercial block between 6th and 7th, where Smith's and the other commercial, whatever the businesses are there. That sort of stacked building.
Yes.
Dramatically different than what's around it. I believe within the historic district, I think. Does anybody know?
I think the historic district runs up to 7th Avenue.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why doesn't it go higher? Okay. Okay.
Babs, can you talk into your microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, I guess that block to me, as a former Avenues resident, not a current Avenues resident, that was something that it felt could use some attention, some beautification or placemaking.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing no others, thank you very much.
Yeah, we appreciate your feedback. Thank you for having us. What is it?
Microphone.
I'm sorry, I thought nobody would care about this so much. It was in the, who are the guys that used to be planners and they started their own website about building Salt Lake? Luke wrote this one, and it's a giant interview with Michaela. Building Salt Lake.
I'm only laughing because it was actually our presentation to Planning Commission, but for some reason Michaela's quoted, so we're just going to go with it after tonight. You know, anything that happens, obviously it's Michaela's fault.
Perfect. Well, we'll blame Michaela. Anyway, pull it up and read it. It's interesting.
Good to know. All right, we do have one, well, actually, I guess two final pieces of business tonight. We need to elect a chair and vice chair. I imagine we're fine doing them together, right? Or do we need to do individually?
You're welcome to do them
All right.
together.
We'll just do them together. Do I have any nominations for either position?
Carlton, I want to nominate you for chair.
Why, thank you. I will accept.
Okay, great.
Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Alan as vice chair.
All right. We have two nominations.
I second both.
We have a second for both. Excellent. Shall we take a roll call vote, please?
Yes.
Adrian?
Aye.
I will vote aye, even though it's out of order at the moment.
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
Babs?
Aye.
Excellent. Unanimous consent. Thank you very much. And with that, we will conclude the Landmark Commission meeting this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.